Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Meet the Candidates event for the Village of Ballston Spa Trustee. All the candidates on the ballot were invited. This event was organized by the League of Women Voters of Saratoga County. We want to thank the Ballston Spa School District for their support in providing a space for the candidates. My name is Kathy Kobrick. I am a member of the League of Women Voters. I live in the town of Malta, and I will be your moderator tonight. The League of Women Voters of Saratoga County is a nonpartisan volunteer political organization dedicated to the informed and responsible participation of citizens in government. The League never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. That has been League policy since 1920. Membership is open to anyone who is eligible to register and vote, whether male or female. Please consider joining your local league. Before we start, I want to remind the candidates and our audience that the video taken tonight is the property of the League and can only be used by the League or licensed media according to FCC regulations. This event will be posted in its entirety. It may not be used by the candidates except to post a link to the complete video. I do not make this request lightly. We have had recent experiences where candidates or their supporters have used portions of our video or an audience member's own video against their opponents. The League is a nonpartisan organization, and use of the video by a campaign specifically against another candidate goes against our purpose. Additionally, this behavior would discredit us with candidates, making it difficult for us to sponsor future forums. All candidates participating this evening have pledged that they will abide by our policy. Questions were sent to us by members of the community. League members reviewed and compiled them to be representative and to avoid redundancy. We reject questions of a personal nature. Candidates, this is your opportunity to let voters know your stance on these topics and how you will address the issues facing the village. Please don't waste valuable time tearing down or labeling your opponent. Deal with the facts. In your closing statements, absolutely no zingers. In other words, no putting your opponent on the spot with no chance to reply. We have timers for this evening's event. Cards will be held up for the candidates to glance at. Green means 1 minute left, yellow means 30 seconds left, and red means your time is up. There are 2 candidates for 1 trustee position. The 2 candidates in alphabetical order are Kamran Parwana, running on the Democrat and a Brighter Future lines, and Bernadette Vendinza Perez, running on the Republican and Voice of Ballston Spa lines. Now it is time to hear their 2-minute opening statements. They have drawn lots to determine order. The first to speak will be Bernadette.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bernadette Vendanza Perez. I'm so honored to be a trustee candidate in the community in which I grew up. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this and gathering us today. I'm running for trustee for a few reasons, but namely, I want to serve our community. I have an interest in ensuring that our economic development is moving forward. That's because my parents are small business owners. They opened their business 20 years ago, Village Photo, and it's still going strong. I also served 8 years on the Business and Professional Association, in which I also was an interim president. I've always been passionate about thoughtful development, so I'm honored also to serve on local planning and zoning boards. One of the biggest concerns we have in this community is that our residents do not feel like they've been heard by the board, by the government. So just want to let people know that my background, 18 years nearly in the assembly, I learned from Jim Tedesco. He was my first boss. He taught me how to do constituent services, and it starts by listening and then also responding thoughtfully. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette. Okay, Cameron, it's your turn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kamran Parwana. So I grew up nearby in Saratoga, and my family moved here shortly after my wife and I got married in 2013. So I work in public policy consulting. For most of my career, I've worked in fragile and conflict-affected states, so in the nastier places in the world, or the places that most people don't want to visit. A lot of the work that I do is very closely related to working with municipalities, helping municipalities to improve. And when a lot of that work has in the past involved spending a lot of time away from home, having to travel all over the world to run from one emergency to another. And COVID changed my life the same way I think it changed a lot of other people's. I got to spend time at home in a way I never had before. Got to see what was going on around us here in the village that I had been missing because I generally wasn't able to sit still. And I saw that there was a lot that has been happening that is in line with skills that I have been able to develop that I would like to be able to contribute to what we're doing here. And above that, to really be able to know that the place that my family lives is on the track that it is now that I think is the right track. The one thing that I also wanted to make sure I said at the beginning was I think for a long time, there was not a lot of choice in terms of elections in the village. And I just want to say up front that I'm really proud to be running a race against Bernadette, where I think people really have an actual good choice of two people that I think would be able to do the job. And I want to just say thank you up front to Bernadette for being someone that I'm proud to be running against.
Okay, thank you, both of you. Now it is time for questions. Candidates will have up to 1.5 minutes to respond to questions. You are not required to respond. You may pass if you wish. You have 2 opportunities during the question and answer session to request an additional 1 minute to add to your response or to respond to something another candidate has said. Just hold up your hand and say red card and with your red card. I will acknowledge your request. I ask that you wait a second so the timers have time to add that minute on. They're using stopwatches. Red cards may not be used in your opening and closing statements. The timer and I will keep track of the number of red cards used. Questions will be directed to candidates in rotation so that everyone gets a chance to respond first. We will start with Bernadette. Okay, the first question is, what potential conflicts might you have in your work or personal life that could affect your decision-making on village business? If you do have conflicts of interest, how will you manage them and place the interests of the village first?
Well, that's a great question. In my role in the assembly, we have to fill out thorough conflict of interest forms. It goes into everything from our investments to our board membership. So I'm used to identifying those possible areas of interest conflicts. Also in the town of Milton, I serve on the planning board. I also have to make those kind of assessments, whether I have a conflict of interest. Mainly, I'm a volunteer. I have a job at the assembly, but mainly I'm a volunteer. It's easy for me to recuse myself if there's something that's conflict, and I will always put residents first before my needs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette. Okay, Cameron.
In terms of conflicts of interest I might have, there are none. The only thing I own in the village is my own home, and have no other business interests here. In fact, my professional interests are very far away from here. In terms of how I would handle a conflict of interest, of course, there are circumstances when you are making decisions about the place that you live, people that you know, people who you see every day. There are places where you have to be very, very careful about where that line is. And of course, when there's a decision where you have a personal interest, you need to make sure that you recuse yourself from that specific decision, and be very careful that you make decisions that are within the interests of the entire village when it does not rise to the level of recusing yourself.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, Kamran, you're going to get the next question first. How will you prepare or alter your positions to work with a board of trustees who might have different goals and opinions? Describe a time when you had to compromise to reach consensus, and what did you learn from that?
Sure. So the majority of my work these days is managing people, managing often large teams of people, managing people who are working across multiple cultural contexts, with people with competing interests. And I never get to make a decision that is just my decision. My job is to sort through what everyone is bringing to the table, making sure that whatever decision is made using the best part of what everybody is bringing, and making sure that everybody feels heard. And obviously there are times where not everybody is happy with the decision that's made, but I always try to make sure that when people bring different viewpoints to a discussion, when you are trying to bring lots of voices in, that everybody feels like they've at least had a chance to contribute. And that means that sometimes I don't get my way. That means sometimes other people don't get their way. But hopefully through that process, we come out with whatever is actually the best solution.
Okay, thank you very much. Bernadette?
You start by building consensus by going to the residents, by going to the voters. They're the people that we work for ultimately. And, you know, if there's a voice in the community, a number of voices that are concerned about how we're voting on a particular issue, I'm certainly going to bring it to attention to my fellow elected officials if I'm given that opportunity. But certainly, part of the best thing about serving the public and working with others is to bounce ideas off of each other. And yeah, I mean, building consensus is more important at the end of the day. Working and moving forward in our community is more important. And I do that every day in my job. And I'm used to having conversations and learning from others and adjusting what my thoughts or expectations are accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You get to go first, Bernadette. How will you communicate with village residents? How will they be able to communicate with you?
Oh, this is a question I love. So there are a number of types of residents in our village. There's young and old. Obviously, there's social media. We're of that age where that's kind of native to us. Although I feel like sometimes I'm a lot older than some of the young people. They're using TikTok. I don't use that. But one thing I really think we need to go back to is, you know, picking up the phone, making a phone call, stopping by residents' houses. You know, if they can't get to a meeting, especially some of our seniors, I want them to be aware of what's going on. And sometimes it's about writing a letter. I will always be available by phone, email, whatever I'm allowed to be available by through the village. I certainly will make myself available to residents. It's that easy, just having a conversation.
Okay, thank you. Kamran?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I think the recent changes to the way that the village government communicates have started to improve things a bit. I mean, the fact that, although it was because of COVID, the fact that meetings are available on Zoom, so more people have access, the newsletters have been going out. I think there are a number of ways that that communication has started to improve, but of course it still doesn't reach everyone. And there are a lot of ways that we need to find to bring people who are not normally engaging in the village government to do that. And I'll say I was one of them. I did not realize how much change had happened in the village for a long time. And it took some digging to find the way into that. But I think there are some groups that reaches and some that doesn't. I think there are a number of things that we can do in order to improve that outreach. Part of it is more open meetings with residents that are less formal, ways of holding more conversational events that are not necessarily restricted by the rules of a board meeting or something like that. But I think also bringing back some of the more community events and having some of the village government engaged in that, members of the village government engaged in that in a way where they're speaking to people who might come out to an event, but not to a board meeting is also important.
Okay, thank you very much, Carmen. All right, you're going to go first this time. This question's a little long. If elected, what is your vision for the future of Ballston Spa regarding infrastructure, municipal vehicles, and development? How can we fund these improvements? Do you think grants are needed? If so, what grants do you plan to pursue, and what are the projected amounts of those grants?
So I think everything in this village needs to be replaced, with the exception of some recent fire equipment. I think pretty much everything is old and needs to be replaced. But I think the conversation has also talked about things as kind of one-time purchases, and I think that's and I don't think that that's an oversight by anyone, but I think it's also, we see the immediate need, and it's very easy to talk about this is what we need now. And obviously the big solution needs to be finding the money to do the work, but the next solution needs to be making sure that it is that whatever is purchased is planned for in a way that that it is maintained, that we are ready when we need to replace it again in the future. But in terms of how we actually pay for it, there is no other way to pay for it if we don't do it with grants. I mean, we are going to be taking many years if we do that by taxes and loans alone. So if we do not find grants to pay for things, which is a totally normal thing to do, I'm surprised that it's a question, even, because that's how most municipalities fund parts of their work. But I think it's absolutely necessary. There are a number of grants that are available. And I think we need to really do a lot more research in terms of pushing things beyond the first couple of things that have been identified that the current board is working on in order,
Thanks.
in
Okay.
order to make sure we get where we need to be.
All right. Thank you. Bernadette?
Well, everyone knows that Ballston Spa needs to invest more in our infrastructure, our large equipment, vehicles, and our buildings. There's been quite some deterioration over the past several years. The biggest thing we need to start doing is to actually invest in it, start shifting some of our money to be more committed from the budget toward those things. Certainly grants are a part of it, but we need to actually do the hard work and start, allocating money that is coming from the taxpayers to these things. We can't keep only counting on grants. Grants are wonderful, and yes, our village should pursue them, but they are not always a guarantee. So we got to do the right budgeting in the first place to start putting us in that right direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this question's going to you first, Bernadette. Hyde Boulevard, Saratoga Boulevard, and West Street have had serious issues with pedestrian crossing, vehicle speed, and the travel of oversized trucks for years. Speeding and traffic controls are still problematic in areas of the village. What solutions would improve pedestrian safety, reduce speed, and deter oversized truck travel?
Finally unmuted, sorry. Traffic is constantly an issue. I'm a pedestrian in this community as well as a driver. We have been going door to door, my running mate and I, and we have been on those streets, and it is a constant issue. My brother actually lives on Hyde Boulevard, and some of the solutions can be simple. There's where there are crosswalks, let's make sure there's a stop sign. That is the case on Hyde Boulevard. There's no stop sign. In the case of the trucks going down Hyde Boulevard, for instance, it is my understanding that there's an issue with GPS directing these trucks down this road. So conversations, we need to maybe work with state DOT a little bit more strongly. I don't know how we would connect with those GPS companies, but that would be one thing. It is a constant issue. So we have to continue to look for solutions, and that might be also sending our police there and observing traffic. So I hope that we can come to solutions and work on this more closely. It is a serious concern of our community.
Okay, thank you. Kamran?
Yes, so there are a number of things that can be done in order to change driving habits on streets. A part of that is design. I mean, there's no surprise that Hyde is the street. I mean, the widest street in the village is the street that people talk the most about having traffic problems. Wide streets make people drive faster. Don't know if it's psychological or if it's habit, but it's the way that it is. And there are ways that you can alter the design of the way that the street looks and works that help to reduce the speed that people drive at. There are a number of things that we can do in terms of signage that actually gets reported to the way that GPS is looked at. So by putting in certain signs that people respond to in different ways, it can change the way that those algorithms work. I don't think that in itself would solve the problem, but it's something that can be done relatively easily. But I think in general, one of the things that we can do is look at how we organize development in terms of town planning in a way that directs traffic to areas that are outside of places that see heavy traffic right now, to disperse that over the village as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, this is going to go to you again, Karen. What kind of businesses do you think the village needs, and how would you attract them? Do you favor changing the zoning laws to allow central business district into the R1 residential district single-family homes? And please explain your answer.
Well, I think the businesses that are in town, I mean, I can't think of another place that has all small businesses and no chain businesses. And I hope that we can continue to keep that at least predominantly the way that business in the village is. It's one of the greatest charms of it, and I think we have better businesses because of it. That certainly, I wouldn't want to go to McDonald's when I can go to any of the businesses, any of the restaurants on Front Street. But at the same time, I think that there does need to be a dispersion of businesses to other parts of the town, not necessarily a concentration of businesses in other neighborhoods in the village. But I think it would be nice to see more businesses that are walkable within the north side, for instance, where I live. I mean, we have to walk a considerable distance to get to Front Street or the other businesses in downtown, and it would be nice to see some things closer to our house. Not to say that it's unreasonable for us to walk that distance, but I think it would be beneficial for a lot of these neighborhoods to have more things closer as well.
Okay, thank you. Bernadette?
I think our small businesses have been doing a wonderful job deciding that Ballston Spa was where they wanted to open. We do have a variety of businesses, from retailers, restaurants, to service businesses. I've worked with many of them on the Ballston Spa Business and Professional Association. They work very hard. As far as businesses in residential districts are one. I personally do not support that. I would like to continue to see our downtown business district develop in a thoughtful way that also supports the businesses that are existing there. I know that many of those businesses would like to see it grow. And ones that people, you know, they come from different backgrounds, different political beliefs, they want to see that downtown grow. There's Angelica's that needs to be redeveloped. There's also another property across the way near Eagle Mount Lee. There's a number of things we can do and we really need to look at. So before we start encroaching on our R1 district where there's homes, we really need to continue to invest in our downtown to make sure that it's thriving.
All right, thank you very much. This one's going to go to you, Bernadette, first. One of the positives of the pandemic was bringing the village and residents to an online platform of communication for meetings. Since in-person meetings are eventually going to resume, do you have a plan for including all meeting agendas and making them structured and audible for those unable to attend in person?
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage our government that we continue to make our agendas and all items available. Many of them are available online. I know they're kind of working out some of the kinks as far as the Zoom hybrid option of, available for those who can't come or, are concerned about their health. We certainly continue to look at that. I know there was some suggestion of maybe the school, not the school, the library, to get something more integrated so that, cameras, microphones maybe are more up to snuff for the hybrid needs of our modern society. We certainly want people to feel comfortable and safe and engaged in their government. So yeah, I would support that very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Cameron?
Yes, the more we can engage people in the meetings that the government is having, in the discussions that are being had, the better. And if we can put that online, we should.
All right, that was easy. This one's going to you, Cameron. What needs to be done to make the revenue from the water system be self-funding in the future so that we are not relying on grants and that future residents do not face a similar predicament?
Sure. So I think the reason that the water system is not self-funding is because we have many decades of maintenance backlog. And I think once that backlog is cleared, it's at least realistic at that point that the water system could be self-funding. The problem is that maintenance hasn't been conducted over time, hasn't been paid for over time. So we're paying for decades of maintenance all at once. Now, if that maintenance is conducted regularly, if those repairs are conducted regularly and are planned for in a way that is normal for a municipal government to project costs and project maintenance and operations, then it is realistic at that point for the water system to become self-funding. That said, I think that we are going to need a lot of money from loans and grants to get to that point because there is that large maintenance backlog that is just unrealistic to pay for through other means.
Okay, thank you. Bernadette?
There are a lot of need for repairs on our water system. As much as we can, it would be great. We need to get grants. But there is a problem currently that our water, our funds coming from water customers are being put in the general fund. Can't happen overnight that we shift that money back to just serving and maintaining our water system, but it needs to start happening and it currently is not. So what I would like to see happen is that we start attributing or allocating that money where it belongs. It's required to be there. So that would be something that I would like to see happen, just gradually moving it over where it needs to be. And then we can really continue to support our water system appropriately.
All right, this one's going to go to you first, Bernadette. Sidewalk maintenance has always been part of the village. This year, the ice storm brought multiple challenges to residents who were unable to maintain their sidewalks for various reasons. The village used to supply salt to those in need at the village garage. Is there a plan to bring this back to residents who are in need to help maintain their sidewalks?
That last ice storm was a doozy. I know that my house was covered in ice and my driveway. And when we went door to door, we ran into people trying to chip away at, I don't know, it seemed like 3 inches of ice to me. It is hard. It is hard at times. I would be interested in looking at maybe a program to make salt affordable for people. I'm not necessarily aware that this existed before, but we can certainly look into it so that it's affordable for people. I know that family friends of mine put, I can't even imagine how much salt they told me, but it was a lot and I know it was expensive. So I don't see why we couldn't look at it. And as anything, if a resident has an idea, certainly worth listening to and maybe seeing if it's feasible.
Okay, thank you. Cameron?
Yeah, so I hope that ice storm was not going to be usual. I live on a corner and we have a lot of internal sidewalks to get to and from the house as well. And we were also on a hill, so the water melts down it and then refreezes. It is really, really difficult to keep that clear. If you want to know the amounts, I went through 2 50-pound bags in a day and didn't even get to the internal sidewalks, and it didn't even clear at all. So I understand the challenge that everyone faces getting all of that up. That said, not every snowstorm is that bad. And even a normal snowstorm is pretty, it can be taxing for people who have different schedules, who can't necessarily get out and pick up a lot of snow. And if there are options for giving assistance to people who do have those difficulties, then I think we absolutely should look into it. We keep having these grants can't do anything. I will say, I believe that in Corinth, they have a grant that allows them to fund sidewalk clearance, but I don't see any reason that shouldn't be something that we could pursue as well. But yes, I think that if there are opportunities for us to do anything to assist people in that, we absolutely should.
Okay, thank you. We're on a little bit of a sidewalk theme here. This is the next question. And it's going to you, Cameron. Do you favor the sidewalks tax that has been proposed? And should village residents who do not have sidewalks pay the sidewalks tax? Please explain your answer.
In terms of the first part of that, so in terms of supporting the sidewalk tax, yes, I think that people in the village should invest in the infrastructure in their village. And in terms of making sure that we have sidewalks that are passable, in terms of making sure everything is maintained. And this is something that reflects on the character of the village when people come in from the outside, when people look at where they want to move, making sure that everything is well maintained is something that is important to making sure that we look like a place that people want to come to, people want to invest in, and people want to stay. In terms of people without sidewalks paying sidewalk tax, yes, I think that should be something that should ideally be flat for everyone. You don't just use the sidewalk in front of your house, you use the sidewalk in front of wherever you're walking, and you walk other places other than your own house.
Okay, thank you. Bernadette.
I do not support the sidewalk tax. It was proposed August 2021. It would impose fees from people that have sidewalks to people that don't have sidewalks. It would apply to churches. It would apply to non-for-profits. It would apply to our business district. There is a code currently, could use some tweaking, certainly, but it needs to be enforced. People should maintain their sidewalks. I don't think that there needs to be a blanket tax on everybody, especially the hundreds of houses that do not have sidewalks, to pay for other people's sidewalks that they do not maintain. We need to enforce the code. We maybe need to, again, adjust the code, but I do not think a blanket tax makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Bernadette, this is coming to you first. There will be a referendum on the ballot to extend Ballston Spa's village elections date from March to November. Do you support or oppose this referendum, and why?
Personally, I do not support the referendum, mainly because Ballston Spa and many villages around the state, they have unique issues. And with all the noise of federal and state elections, town elections, I would hate for our issues to get lost in that noise of campaigning. So I personally prefer that it stay in March. It really hasn't, people complain it's hard to walk in the snow and the cold. It's actually been a joy to meet with people, and they've been happy to talk with us. So the issues matter, and also the time and attention matters that we give them.
Okay, thank you. Cameron?
Yes, I absolutely do support that. I mean, if the question is the village issue is getting lost in a national election, they're getting lost anyway. 10% of people roughly vote in village elections, and that's a loss. There are a lot of people. I mean, if we're talking about restoring the village's voice, we need more people to vote. We want more people to express their opinions, and that means that we want to engage more people. And yes, going out and talking to people is helpful in that, but we know that it is not we're engaging a limited number of people. It'll also save the village a small bit of money, not a significant amount, but some, and make operations of the elections a bit smoother, easier. It's being done by the County Board of Elections. It makes sense. But in general, just that greater engagement, making sure a larger number of people are engaged in the election. Yes, some of the village's issues might be harder to raise above the level of that national conversation, but there are more people listening, and yes, we'll have to work harder to make sure that those issues are heard, but we're reaching a larger number of people.
Okay, thank you, Cameron. All right. Is there more opportunity to share services with the town of Milton and Ballston Spa? And if so, can you describe those and what the overall benefit would be for the village? That's to you, Cameron.
Sure. So, I mean, aside from those that we already do, I think there are a lot of places where the work that is being done overlaps. So some of that could potentially be in terms of infrastructure. So there's the actual infrastructure that we have now that is shared, but in terms of restoring and building future infrastructure, I think we can do the extension of systems that we already have, the repair of systems that we already have at a lower cost if we are doing it in cooperation with other municipalities, and making sure that they invest in the systems that they take place in. The design of those systems is something that can benefit from positions that are already existing in other municipalities. And I think that we have the opportunity to undertake larger potential projects with the towns that we're already a part of.
Okay, thank you very much. Bernadette.
We've been talking about this a lot through the campaign cycle. One area that some people don't think about sometimes is possibly shared engineering services. We spend a lot of money, all municipalities spend a lot of money on engineering. If there were a way to possibly collaboratively pay for this, maybe we can have a full-time engineer through working with the different towns. That's one area that had come to mind. Also, we continue to build those relationships with our highway departments in both of those towns, with our DPW. I know that sometimes there's like a loaning of equipment. We can continue to build on that as we repave roads, fix our sewer and water systems. So there's a number of areas, but those are the two that come to mind right now.
Okay, thank you. All right, Bernadette, this one's coming to you. Do you support marijuana use in public? And do you propose treating it like open containers and banning it?
Well, I don't know that we should encourage it in public. It certainly should be regulated as if it were open container drinking. The referendum, not the referendum, but when they voted last year to whether to allow dispensaries and lounges, that came up. Our small businesses, a few of them spoke up and they said they would like to see that. I supported that. I think that we certainly should take advantage of any revenue that's going to come through our communities, because town of Milton and town of Ballston supported it, and I know we can't lose out on the opportunity. But I would be concerned that we had on-street smoking, not even so much about the drug aspect of it, but the nuisance of it, the smoke. That would be something I'd be concerned about our children and just businesses having to deal with that in front of their storefronts. So we'd have to look at it. It would take some more careful attention from our law enforcement.
Okay, thank you. Cameron?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I agree generally. It depends on what you're talking about when you say public. If we're talking about someone walking down the street, apologies to all of the smokers out there, the cigarette smokers. I don't personally appreciate when someone's walking in front of me smoking a cigarette, and I would like that not to be part of my daily routine. But it's obviously a bit different when you're talking about marijuana. And I don't necessarily oppose the use of it in a business that is designed for that purpose. In fact, I don't see any reason that we shouldn't, but making sure that it's not something that becomes that makes it harder for families to walk on the street is something that I would want us to make sure that we can avoid. So I think when we talk public, I think public places in terms of businesses that are designed for that, great. In terms of kind of walking around and using it normally, not that you don't see that occasionally, but I would rather it not be a very common thing.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is for you, Carmen. What are some good options for the Angelical, Maplewood, and Ricketts properties?
Oh, sorry, I was already unmuted. Sure. So I think I would like to see a property that has something or a development of that property that has something that really attracts people from outside of the village, and that needs to be something that we don't have in the surrounding area. So whether that is very specific retail, whether that is some sort of attraction. Attraction might be the wrong word, but some sort of activity that would be a business that brings people in. I hope that we would have something that is not retail that turns over regularly, not something that is too similar to what we have in the surrounding area, so that we do bring in development that adds something new to the town within the kind of idea of what we have already. So I hope that each of those, I know the situation with Ricketts is a bit different than the other two, where one is a bit more within the purview of what the village is able to decide on versus Ricketts, that I believe is still in private hands. But I hope that whatever ends up going in there is something new and something that we don't have around
Thank you.
us.
Do you want to, you both have red cards, and we only have one more question after this one. So if you want to expound on anything, you have time. Guess not. Bernadette?
What I want to see in Ballston Spa is ideally what people had already expressed they wanted to see. Before we had the economic development plan announced, there was a whole process where they had roundtables and discussions with residents. And I would think it would need to be a balance of things that can attract visitors to Ballston Spa. Ballston Spa is wonderful. We get a lot of people from Saratoga Springs visiting the track come to our village to spend their money when it's busy or they want a quieter time. We also get a lot of people from, Schenectady, Niskuna. So I want something we could possibly attract people to, different businesses. I'd like mixed use buildings in those areas, but it also needs to be something sustainable for our community. Our residents are some of the greatest supporters of our small businesses, so certainly mixed use buildings that support a number of types of businesses, both that can attract people from out of the area and also be supported by our local shoppers.
Okay, thank you. I guess I have two more questions. So this one's going to go to you first. This question was asked by someone who described themselves as a frequent pedestrian, Bernadette. I like that the village is set to become safer for bicyclists and pedestrians. What are you prepared to do to help implement the master plan to improve, repair, and restore our sidewalks, parks, and roadways?
While I am also a pedestrian, I mean, I do drive, but as much as possible, I try to walk. I live right downtown, right off the block away from Route 50. So I like to walk to the restaurants that I eat at or shop, different stores that I shop at. I also sat on the pedestrian and cyclist committee for the BSVPA. We had deep discussions about our cycling paths and our sidewalks. I think we need to have them more connected, and we already outlined a plan of that we could possibly implement. Not everything is a priority. We have some bigger priorities at the moment in our infrastructure, but where we can and when we have money, there are smaller efforts on there that we can start tackling at, whether it's signage, better signage, better connections, crossings. So those are things that we looked at, thought about deeply for, gosh, a year or so. And so I'd be happy to talk to any resident about that and heck, take a walk with them and see what their concerns are, if there are any particular concerns. But I'd also like to look at expanding our study if possible, or it could just take a conversation. But yes, pedestrian safety is super important. I'm one of you, and hope to work on that more closely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Cameron?
Yeah, so I'm getting a little bit of feedback there. Okay, that's no problem. Sorry. Yeah, my family walks in and out of town pretty frequently. It's not the easiest part of town to walk through. So walking with a stroller down the across the bridge over the Cateros is not always easy, but it's not the worst in the world. It's a little loud, a little you got to hold on to the kids tight so they don't run off, but it could be a more comfortable experience. But outside of that, I personally feel generally comfortable most places that we walk in the village. That said, I think that there's a lot that can be done in order to better connect both in terms of safety and in terms of attractiveness, some of the areas in the downtown, some of the other neighborhoods, in a way that is more inviting, first of all, that makes it more clear where the safest path is. So if you're walking off of Front Street to any of the businesses that are elsewhere downtown, it's not always obvious what the best route is between one street and another. And I think we can do more to make that more inviting. I think we can do more to highlight what the easiest route is for people who might be less inclined to leave the main area. And I think that will eventually result in stronger economic growth outside of the existing space.
Thank you. Okay, excellent. This is the last question, and it's going to go to you. And Kamran, I'm very sorry. I think I pronounced your name differently every time I introduced you, but I'm trying.
Everybody does.
All right. Do you favor or not favor changing the local curfew law, and why?
Yes, I personally find the idea of a curfew a bit insulting to the intelligence of our children. Yes, there are things that we need to do to make sure that streets are safe for kids at night. But I also feel that we can treat kids with the kind of respect that we would want them to treat us with. And I think that creating a restriction like that gives an image of who we are that is not us. I've spent a lot of time in authoritarian states, and I would never compare a curfew to some of the restrictions I've dealt with in other places. But it sounds to me, I hate to use this term, but it sounds to me un-American to say that a person can't walk on a public street when they want to is insulting. And yes, I know that there are issues around that in terms of making sure that there are no issues with noise, making sure that there are no issues with safety, but I think that we can deal with that in other ways.
Okay, thank you. Bernadette.
So I grew up under the curfew law. I did not feel that it was impediment of my personal freedoms as a teenager. or as a young person. In fact, there are a number of things that are outlined in our curfew law that allow for young people to go to work, allow for people to express and participate in protests, legal protests. There are a number of other items that have parental permission involved. So I don't think it's necessarily so restrictive. I think one of the biggest things that it contributes to is it allows our police officers, our law enforcement to check in with children. Sometimes you got to wonder, why are you out so late? Not because you're in trouble, but what is going on? Is there a reason? Do you have your parents' permission to be out? Oftentimes, probably not. But sometimes it's an opportunity for law enforcement to make a contact with a child who might not be in a safe situation with their guardians or parents. Some people grow up in tough homes and they might feel the need to run out of the house. And so it's just already been expressed that has been a tool that has made those important connections with young people that need a little extra help. Personally, I don't support removing the curfew, and I know a number of other residents have already expressed this to the government. So I hope it continues in a way that makes sense for everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. It's now time for closing statements. Candidates, you have no more than 1 minute each to make your closing statement. The first to speak will be Bernadette.
I just wanted to express my deep thanks to this community. It's been such an honor and pleasure to run for office. I've loved talking to every single one of you that I've met and knocked on your door. I've heard funny stories about, oh, I've known you since you were little, or I knew you in church when you were little. It's just been really wonderful to make those connections. I hope and encourage everyone, no matter how you're going to vote, to go out and vote on March 15th. It's really important that we have our village residents make that decision in our government.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette. Kamran?
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. I just want to say, so I am glad that we've had the chance to speak face to face, kind of for the first time, and it's nice hearing this a little, not quite as a back and forth, but a little bit more. I'm not someone who's big on small talk or big on chatting. It's not really my thing, but I hope what I'm bringing to this is a depth of technical skill that I hope will complement what is happening already, and I hope that I can help to strengthen what the village needs in terms of making sure that initiatives are brought forward in a way that is structurally sound in terms of the way that things are being done, in terms of making sure that we continue with the sound finances that we have in a way that is well planned, and in a way that we can have these good discussions.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you both candidates. Please remember to vote Tuesday, March 15th. Polls will be open from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Polling sites are the Eagle Mat Lee and Union Firehouses. Besides the candidates, there will be one proposal on the ballot. Thank you, candidates, for attending this event and helping to educate the voters. And thank you, audience, for taking the time to learn about the candidates. Good night, everyone.